We are here to predict the United States Grand Prix 56 laps around Circuit of the Americas. Previous winners include Max Verstappen 3 times, so it doesn't even matter if I say the years. Pole sitters include Charles Leclerc in 2023, Carlos Sainz in 2022, which I forgot about, even though we were there. I was kind of surprised when I looked that up, but then I remembered George Russell absolutely nuked him into turn one, and it didn't matter anyways. And Max
Yep.
Verstappen in 2021. Let us jump right into it with our podium pusher of the weekend. Who do you think will have the best weekend at the United States Grand Prix?
I have gone with Lando Norris. It was really hard for me to pick this because I really think Red Bull might figure some things out. But Lando came out of the summer break absolutely cooking, and I think he's going to do the same. I think the time off did great things for Lando in the summer break, and I'm hoping that it did the same during this, I don't know what we're calling this, fall break, winter break, I don't know. I think this time off will do the same for him. I mean, you know, there's not like a mandatory factory shutdown during this break like there is during the summer break, so maybe got to spend a little bit more time in the sim, you know, doing work and stuff like that, preparing for Austin. So we'll see what happens, but I think Lando is going to have a great weekend, and yeah, I'd love to see him have a great weekend in Austin. So
Lando Norris is a great choice. It's only fitting that I have chosen his main title rival, Max Verstappen, as my podium pusher of the weekend. I believe in Red Bull's upgrades, and that might be incredibly foolish of me. I don't know, because they have been pretty terrible since the summer break and maybe even a couple races before then. But I don't know if it's just baked into my mind that I have seen so much Red Bull domination over the past 24 months of my life that I'm just confident in when they say they're bringing an upgrade, it will work. But who knows? They have everything going against them. Adrian Newey, gone. Momentum, non-existent. Sergio Perez, in the wall. So there's no reason for me to believe that Red Bull will be good because they haven't been good. But I'm going to go with it anyways, and I think Max Verstappen is going to have a great weekend. We have not seen anyone besides Max Verstappen win at Circuit of the Americas, so who knows? Maybe he will do it again, but that is my pick for podium pusher of the weekend. Moving on to backmarker of the weekend, who do you think will have the worst weekend this time out at Circuit of the Americas?
my back mark of the weekend might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going with Liam Lawson. Liam, when you think about him entering the sport last year, he had literally nothing to lose. You know, he could come in, do way worse than Daniel. It wasn't going to matter. Daniel was still going to come back, you know, when his hand healed up. But this year, Liam is, we've talked about it last week. We talked about it quite a bit. This whole Liam Lawson, Daniel Ricciardo, Sergio Perez love triangle, or whatever you want to call it. But Liam has a lot to lose here. He's driving not only for the RB seat in 2025, but he's definitely driving for the Red Bull seat in 2025. So if he doesn't perform here, you know, his entire career is on the line. So I think there's a lot more pressure on Liam, and I'm interested to see how he performs. My official prediction is that pressure will get to him in Austin. He hasn't raced on this track in an F1 car either, so that's another thing going against him. But we'll see what happens. Liam seems like a really nice guy, and we did see him drive very fast last year, so I could be entirely wrong, but
I've gone for Sergio Perez as my back marker of the weekend, and it honestly hurts me to say that because he has so much fan support at Circuit of the Americas. It is incredible to see the Mexican fans just stand on their feet and cheer every single time he goes around the track, even if it is pre-practice 3 early in the morning on a Saturday. Sergio Perez support is just through the roof at Circuit of the Americas, and so I want him to have a good race. Last year, he was a bit of a disappointment here. He was off the pace. He was kind of the slowest of the top 8. And so it wasn't a good race from Sergio Perez. I'm worried that he's going to do it again just because he doesn't really have a lot of momentum in the season right now. I don't know what this break is going to do for him. Maybe it'll make him more comfortable with the car, but who knows if Red Bull brings these upgrades and it makes Sergio Perez even less comfortable with the car. Who's to say? But I'm going to go with Sergio Perez as my official prediction for backmarker this weekend. All right, let's keep it moving. it's a sprint weekend. It has been a long time since we have had a sprint. I have my opinions on if a sprint race belongs at Circuit of the Americas, but that is besides the point. Who do you think is going to get pole for the sprint race in Austin?
For the sprint race, I have gone with Charles Leclerc. He has qualified really well around Austin. He was on pole last year, and he actually drove a really good race until he was unfortunately disqualified. I believe he was in P2 when he was disqualified at the end of last year's race. But yeah, he's performed well around here in the past, and I expect him to kind of right out of the gate, sprint qualifying, get it done. So we'll see what happens.
Charles Leclerc is always a great choice for pole because he is such a great qualifier. Lewis Hamilton got disqualified from P2 last year. Ferrari actually did the most absurd one stop with Charles Leclerc, and he was having a great race, and then they just left him out on those hard tires for pretty much the entire Grand Prix, and he finished down the order and then got disqualified just to rub some salt in the wound. It was unfortunately Charles Leclerc's pole to DSQ race. So yeah, not the best weekend from him, but he has the pace around here, so it is a good choice. I've gone with Lando Norris. I think Lando Norris is also a great qualifier. He has ironed out some of those qualifying mistakes, and so I have a lot more confidence in him in qualifying. I have no reason to believe that McLaren won't still be the fastest package unless these Red Bull upgrades are absolutely insane. Who knows? Ferrari could come out and be the fastest package. That's just where we are in Formula One right now, where we have no idea what the form is. But I'm going to say that it's going to stay consistent, and Lando Norris will qualify on pole for the sprint race. Who do you think will win the sprint in Austin?
This was a really tough decision for me, but I think Lando is going to win. Even if Charles, I expect McLaren to still be the fastest package. I expect qualifying in the sprint to be really close. So if Charles gets pole, I think Lando's right there. And I think that Lando definitely has the pace to overtake Charles in the sprint. So that's kind of the situation that I've envisioned in my mind. So we'll see what happens, but I don't know. These cars are all fast. These drivers are all fast. Maybe Oscar, pulls out a win or something. I don't know.
I agree with you. I think Lando Norris will also win the sprint race in Austin. I think he's going to come out man on a mission, and we're going to see him take the full 8 points on Saturday. This is something crazy to think about. It is a sprint weekend. We haven't had one in a while, which means 34 points are up for grabs if you get the maximum amount across the two races. We could be sitting here after Saturday seeing Lando Norris into the 40s on his championship deficit. And so we could start to see the championship lead start to decrease before we even get to Sunday, which is very, very exciting. But speaking of Sunday, let's talk about the Grand Prix. Who do you think will qualify in pole position for the main Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas?
In the main Grand Prix pole position, I've gone with Oscar Piastri. Like I said before, I think qualifying is going to be very, very close. Oscar has been a great qualifier this year. Not as good as Lando, not as good as Charles. Not even, I would say, as good as Max this year. But when Oscar does well around a track, he, usually is good on Saturday and Sunday. So I think Oscar is going to have a great qualifying and qualify on pole. That's I've gone with a couple hot takes, I guess, maybe with Liam Lawson as back marker and Oscar Piastri on pole. But we'll see what happens.
I have gone with Charles Leclerc as my prediction for pole. Pretty much the exact same reason that you said that you think he's going to qualify on sprint pole. I will say that I think he will qualify on pole for the main Grand Prix. He's just a really fast qualifier. We've seen him qualify on pole here before, so I have reason to have faith that Charles Leclerc will perform in qualifying again this weekend. Let's move on to our podium predictions. Who do you think is going to finish in P3 at the United States Grand Prix?
P3, I've gone with, and I changed this one last second, but I've gone with Charles Leclerc. Like we have just said a couple different times, but he is faster on COTA. And I think that Ferrari's going to have a great weekend. Ferrari also has a lot of support at COTA. Well, I'm sure they have a lot of support everywhere. COTA is the only place I've ever been. But they seem to have a lot of support, and Ferrari fans are really passionate. So I would love to see Charles Leclerc finish on the podium for the Tifosi in Austin.
I have gone with Charles Leclerc's adopted son or brother. I don't know what they went with on that, but I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri in P3. I just think McLaren will have the fastest car. I think Oscar Piastri has been a fairly consistent driver. I think, especially at this later portion of the season, I think we'll start to see the Championship 2 kind of start to separate themselves from the pack and really be duking it out at the front of the field like we saw with Lewis and Max in 2021. You know, I mean, there was some drama in that season, but when it came time to it at the end of it, it felt like they were just in another league. I think we might see something similar to that. And so if you were taking the other 18 drivers who I expected to come out in P3, I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri. So I think he will finish third at the United States Grand Prix. Who do you have in second place this weekend?
Second place, I've gone with Oscar Piastri. I think, like you just said, Oscar is a very fast driver. I think he has a lot of podiums, so far, a couple wins so far this season. So I think that Oscar's gonna finish on the podium in P2.
I've gone for Max Verstappen in P2. I kind of spoiled who my top two when I was explaining P3, but I do believe in Red Bull's upgrades. I believe in Max Verstappen even more than I believe in Red Bull's upgrades. He is, in my mind, still the fastest driver on the grid. Even in this slump, I think he's done a great job of damage limitation. And so in my mind, if that Red Bull is improved even slightly, I think he'll be in with a shout for the victory. Also, Circuit of the Americas has been resurfaced for this year. They took out a lot of bumps throughout the track, and that's something that Red Bull struggled with throughout the year, was their car being unsettled by bumps on circuits. And so I think if you get rid of those, that favors Red Bull a little bit. And so I think that just adds some evidence towards a Max Verstappen P2. But what really counts is P1. So who do you think will win the 2024 Formula One United States Grand Prix?
I've gone with Lando Norris. I think Lando is just, like I said before, he came out of the last break just flying, had his most dominant race victory in his career at the race following the summer break. I don't know that that's going to happen this weekend. I don't think it will, but I expect Lando to win this race.
I have also predicted a Lando Norris win, but I hope it's close so we get to actually watch a race for the lead. But I agree. I think the McLaren should be the fastest car. I think Lando Norris has been ironing out some of those mistakes. I think the summer break was really good for a mental reset for him, and I think he's been in a good place mentally since the summer break. I expect that to continue. So Lando Norris, P1 at the United States Grand Prix. We agree on that. It is time for our two push-in predictions. We're getting bold. We're getting crazy with it. So Brandon, what are your two push-in predictions for the United States Grand Prix?
This one is maybe the boldest prediction I have ever had on this podcast. I hope you're ready for it. But I am predicting that Lance Stroll scores points. It's crazy. I know. I know. But, Lance had a decent race here last year. I believe he was in point-scoring positions even before the disqualifications happened. But he finished in P7, I want to say. But yeah, he had a good race. Fernando did not have a great race last year here. It was a DNF for him, unfortunately. But I think Lance will kind of have a quietly good weekend. Maybe sneak in some points at some point during the weekend, whether that be the sprint or the main Grand Prix. We'll have to see. But that's my first prediction. For my second prediction, I've got Sergio Perez, and I'll qualify this by the main Grand Prix, saying in the main Grand Prix, Sergio finishes behind a driver that is not in one of the top four teams. So that being Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes. So I think somebody else will sneak in there. That could be Lance Stroll. That could get both of the predictions right there. Could be Nico Hülkenberg, maybe an Alex Albon, slides in there. Franco Colapinto's been very fast, so he could help me out. We'll see what happens, but those are my two push-in predictions.
Are you sure you want to restrict that to just Sunday? I'll allow you to have it on Saturday too if you want it. You don't have to put yourself in a box.
All right, I'll take Saturday then.
All right, he's taking Saturday. So at some point this weekend, Sergio will finish behind a driver that is not in the top 4 teams. My first push-in prediction, and I'm going to go on a bit of a rant with this one, but it is that the top 8 in the sprint race is all 8 of the drivers from the top 4 constructors, because I think Circuit of the Americas is a terrible track to host a sprint at. I'm excited it's happening. I can't wait to watch it. More competitive action to see in person. That's great. What makes Circuit of the Americas a great track? We've seen it. It's the pit stop strategy. This track is usually a 2-stop, but you have some teams that attempt the 1-stop and see if that puts them ahead. We have drivers try 5 or 6 laps undercuts both times until they have double-digit older tires at the end of the race. It is pit stops that make this race good. This track is massive. Massive tracks don't work for sprint races because after the start, you kind of just spread out on that thing and don't have much overtaking opportunities until the pit stops happen. What don't you get in a sprint race? Pit stops. And so it's probably going to be a procession. It was a bit of a procession last year. I loved watching it because it was a race. But I understand if you're watching it on TV, it's probably boring. And it was boring on TV last year. I wouldn't watch the highlights. It was terrible. It was like a 5-minute long highlight video because then nothing happened. There was no overtakes in that race. I'm going to get off my soapbox, and I'm excited that Formula 1 is there. Circuit of the Americas, thank you for hosting another Formula 1 weekend. But whoever makes the calendars, stop making bad tracks sprint races. Spa is going to be a sprint race next year. That's going to be even worse. But that's besides the point. My prediction is that the top 8 in the sprint race will be all 8 drivers from the top 4 constructors. My second prediction is that Haas will score the most points of any midfield team. They got a partnership with Toyota. That's cool. Won't have any effect on this weekend in the slightest, but gives the team some momentum. I have been extremely impressed with what their new team principal has been able to do this year, and I think Haas is moving in the right direction. I'm very excited to see their driver lineup for next year and where they go for that, but that is besides the point as well. They've got an awesome livery. I think that's worth at least an extra 5 miles per hour on the straight. And so I think Haas will score the most points of any midfield team. That is my second bold prediction. The fans at machine_Chaz says Haas scores big points. What do we want to define big points as for this to count?
I don't know. We could say 5 points.
Perfect. That's what I was thinking in my head too. 5 or more points, and Machine Chaz gets this one right. At PVK_96_ says Max gets a grand slam, which would be crazy. Those upgrades for Red Bull must be working a treat if that happens. And at AdaptedPunked_ says Red Bull will have their worst weekend of the year and fall even further off the pace, which would also be crazy to watch. But I think those are great predictions from us, great predictions from the fans. We'll have to see what happens. But that is all we have got for our predictions for the 2024 United States Grand Prix. Thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast. As always, we appreciate it very much. We would appreciate it even more if you subscribed, followed, liked, left a comment, and did all of the things you know to do from wherever you are watching or listening. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all of the places. We are there. Thank you so much for listening. Come see us at Austin, and we will see you in the next episode.
See ya.